Chapter 3. ISFJ. What does it mean? The breakdown. In order to understand the ISFJ personality type, let us first examine the breakdown. We will consider each attribute, each part of the type equation. I. Introvert. As an introvert, you indicate a preference for your, quote, own inner world, says the Myers and Briggs Foundation. Merriam-Webster defines the verb introvert, quote, to concentrate or direct upon oneself, end quote. The noun is defined as, quote, a shy person, a quiet person who does not find it easy to talk to other people, end quote. The Oxford Dictionary defines the noun introvert as, quote, a shy, reticent person, end quote. It also provides a psychological definition, quote, a person predominantly concerned with their own thoughts and feelings rather than with external things, end quote. Introverts can also be described as those who expend energy in interactions with the outer world and restore energy during periods of quiet and reflection. Therefore, they need some time alone, if not physically, then at least in their own minds. Common descriptions of the introvert include reserved, somewhat private, passive in large group settings, more observant than participative, contemplative, introspective, inwardly focused, prefers a few to a crowd, prefers deeper conversation to pleasant but more superficial chatter, prefers a quiet dinner or game night with 10 to an elaborate gala of 200, needs and enjoys people but has just a few very close friends, tends to think before speaking. Since definitions of introvert range from quiet and shy to self-focused to energized from within to energy-conserving, we might be led to believe that we are unfit, antisocial and selfish and weak and lazy, or, on the other hand, to imagine that we are superior, contemplative and introspective and philosophical. As with each of these attributes, the truth lies somewhere there in between. I have come to appreciate the profound example of the two-sided coin. We must remember that our most frustrating weaknesses are most often inextricably linked to our greatest strengths. Expanding on above descriptions of introverts and extrapolating from personal experience, I present the following as descriptions of the introvert experience. I believe that the following things can be said of almost any of us, and the more differentiated our preference, the truer they will be. 1. We hold back. In most settings, we do not just, quote, let ourselves go. Our response to others and to our environment tends to be somewhat measured. This is not to say that we cannot share, cannot let down under the right circumstances, or do not allow ourselves to be known. We want to be known, just like everyone else, but in the way of our own choosing, safely. 2. To at least some small extent, we find the social exercises to be taxing on our energies. There is only so much we can take. At the big, boisterous social mixer, we feel ourselves to be Daniels in the proverbial lion's den. We fare much better in smaller, meaningful interactions than in larger social contexts. We may thoroughly enjoy a full day alone, or with one or two close friends, but 2 hours in a cocktail party event may exhaust us. We are not social butterflies, flitting from one exchange of pleasantries and rubbing of elbows to the next. No, not social butterflies, more like social turtles, cautious and measured in our habit of socialization. We can be in the midst of an active crowd and looking for cover as we cling to some shred of anonymity, or even already closed up, having retreated into our own shells. 3. I've heard introverts say, I don't like people. I hate to hear that said because introverts need people, desperately. Not a drove, maybe, but at least a dependable few. And people need us. And even those whom I have heard say that they don't like people love a certain set of people. So it's not really people they don't like, it's the work of dealing with people. And most often, others are no more difficult to deal with than the avowed people disliker himself. If we really dislike people, we need to examine our own hearts. If not, then we shouldn't be saying we do. 4. We are introspective. We tend to think deeply about things, And our deep thinking sometimes combines with a loss of perspective that results when we pull too far into ourselves to cause us to be vulnerable to self-centeredness or melancholy. The deep thinking and self-examination can be good, but we must also look outside ourselves in order to interact generously with others and to maintain perspective. 5. We need alone time. We don't mind an evening at home. We need some time to be alone with a book or a hobby or some creative pursuit, or to just be with our own thoughts in our own inner worlds. S. Sensory. A person who prefers the sensory, S, rather than intuitive, N, function of perception is most likely more focused on the immediately observable than the possible, more focused on the reality than the hypothetical, more focused on the concrete than the abstract, more focused on the past and present than future, more interested in the facts than the fantasy or vision. As sensors, we tend to be concrete thinkers. We like to deal in facts and realities, that which we can see, hear, feel, taste, and touch. We tend to be observant, detail-oriented, practical, methodical, thorough, and sequential. We have little interest in the hypothetical, improbable, possible, or fantastic. We see things as matters of fact, and don't want to be dragged into the speculative, quote, out there. Objective observation is our strength, not subtle impression or imagination. It's not that we don't have impressions, imaginations, and even intuitions. Again, everyone lies somewhere along the NS spectrum. It's just that our objective observation takes precedence. We have our feet on the ground, our frame of reference in previous experience, and our focus on the here and now. F. Feeling. As one whose judging preference is feeling, F, rather than thinking, T, our primary consideration in making judgments is feelings. How will it make others feel? Will it increase or decrease their good feelings? In our deliberations, then, truth and justice may be compromised or at least influenced by our consideration of the feelings of other people concerned. It is not an irrational but a rational approach. It's just that priority is somewhat skewed away from pure truth-based logic and toward what I'll call human factors, the effect of any outcome on others. Just as a thinker deliberates in his rational but impersonal way in order to make a correct judgment, the feeler deliberates in his relational human way. We all agree that we should make a judgment that is right and good. In real life, however, options are rarely black and white, and trade-offs have to be made. While this is certainly an oversimplification, with the thinker and feeler it is almost as if, when right and good can in any way be distinguished, the thinker battles for what is right, just and true, and the feeler for what is good, creating peace and goodwill. We might alternatively say that, unlike the thinker who decides with his head, the feeler decides with his heart. So, as feelers, we are concerned about how our decisions will affect others. We may be more likely to go with a compromise judgment, one which produces the most harmony and the least distress all around. We value what is right, but our determination as to what is right may be colored by our perception of the effects, for good or ill, of a given judgment on real people. J. Judging. The J/P dichotomy expresses a person's preference with respect to his outer world. Introverts who prefer judging over perception will have a judging cognitive function, T or F, as the first extroverted and second auxiliary function. For the ISFJ, this means that extroverted feeling, FE, will be the auxiliary function and the one primarily used in interacting with the outer world. While it is not the dominant function for the introvert, then the judging preference, FE, will be the more visible of the two. The FE is very sensitive to the feelings of others, detecting subtleties of demeanor, and her external behaviors are based in large part upon them. The IFE, which would of course include ISFJ, wants to see everyone happy. He detects conflict and seeks harmony for all in his world, and his interactions are gauged in such a way as to try to affect that outcome. Tact, discretion, and diplomacy are hallmarks of IFE types, And we might say with respect to the blunders of others that the IFE covers a multitude of indiscretions, or at least makes every effort to do so. A judging introvert will use her dominant, perceptive function with respect to her preferred inner world. For ISFJ, introverted sensing, SI, will be the dominant function. SI seems to be distinguished from SE in part by the preferred application of sensory information. SE uses his detailed sensory observations for practical, real-time navigation as he interacts with the world. SI, on the other hand, seems to store and catalog such observations for future reference, such that a new smell or taste or visual can be compared with sensory information from the past. ISI types are rooted in tradition and tend to prefer the familiar. They compare their current circumstances, problems, or experiences with those from their past, which are clearly recorded in terms of sensory information, which is in turn linked to emotions surrounding the past experience, and interpret the present through the lens of those past experiences. They tend to be more conservative, to work with reliable, proven methods, and to be the preservers of customs. What are the practical implications of my ISFJ personality? My strengths. It is no coincidence that Myers-Briggs refers to the ISFJ as defender. Other descriptors given the type are conservator, helper, nurturer, protector, altruistic, caring, compassionate, conscientious, considerate, dependable, diligent, dutiful, faithful, giving, loyal, patient, perceptive, practical, peace-loving, service-oriented, social, supportive, and stable. Clearly, we have something important to offer. We are keenly observant of the feelings and needs of those around us. We are committed to doing what we can do to help where help is needed, and we are steady and dependable in follow-through. We are accurate, detail-oriented, down-to-earth, hard-working, industrious, meticulous, orderly, practical, precise, reliable, responsible, steady, straightforward, thorough, and true to our commitments. We tend to be well organized and good with money. Who could ask for more, really, in a friend, caregiver, employee, or teacher? In the ISFJ, we see a loyal, dependable, and sacrificial companion, friend, or coworker. In addition, we see a loyal and reliable employee who is precise and thorough. We could wonder in looking at such a list what's not to love in an ISFJ, or even in being an ISFJ for that matter. But we know that there are two sides to every coin, so now we will turn to the weaknesses of the type. My weaknesses. ISFJ's reserve could certainly be perceived as a weakness. His reluctance to extend himself toward others is sometimes misinterpreted as disinterest, or worse, dislike or disdain. That reserve also can prevent him from openly expressing his own emotions. Such repression is unhealthy, as it can deny others the ability to know and respond to the ISFJ's needs, and it can interfere with open communication in relationships. ISFJ's focus on helping others can backfire. Her priority of seeing others happy sometimes gets carried away, resulting in a martyr syndrome, or at least a perceived martyr syndrome. Nobody wants to be indebted at all times to a martyr, or worse, she can provide help that is not helpful and, in some cases, may even be detrimental to the object of her service. ISFJ's discomfort with the spotlight, paired with his perfectionistic tendencies, lead him to downplay any credit or even compliment that he might receive from others for his work or service. He doesn't know how to deal with such attention, and furthermore, he recognizes flaws in his work or service and therefore does not feel entirely worthy of any praise that may be offered. ISFJ's preference for the traditional and familiar make it difficult for him to transition. The greater the transition, a job change, a move to another state, etc., the more difficult the transition. But even a vacation can be somewhat upsetting on both ends, as the ISFJ has to pull up from that with which he has become comfortable and move to something else. And a change of method at work, or schedule, or even chair, may be resisted by the ISFJ. ISFJ is a people pleaser. She works hard to please and wants in return to be accepted and appreciated, as uncomfortable as she may be with receiving overt appreciation. In order to please people, she will be tempted to agree to whatever they ask as long as it does not compromise her beliefs and perspective. Overcommitment can become a chronic problem to the ISFJ as she seeks to please as many people as possible. It is said that the ISFJ may take things too personally and therefore be prone to defensiveness and negativity. Perhaps this is because he feels responsible for pleasing others and maintaining harmony. Such priorities might lead an ISFJ to feel particularly and possibly overly sensitive to and hurt by criticisms. Perfectionistic tendencies may again play in as the ISFJ struggles with his failure to maintain perfect harmony and to make everyone happy. Career recommendations for ISFJ. One point that has been made before in this book, and will likely be made again, is that not all ISFJs are alike. ISFJ is a type, which gives us a general picture based upon your answers to carefully selected questions designed to determine our preferences. This is important when we think about careers. If an ISFJ is not clearly differentiated in one or more of the dichotomies, there may be other careers besides those indicated here which might suit him as well as or better. Sometimes ISTJ careers, which include some of the less service and people-oriented careers, such as musician, artist, engineer, surgeon, and accountant, can be good for ISFJs, especially those who are not greatly differentiated between F and T. If you are not clearly differentiated between N and S, you might look at INFJ careers, and so forth. Typical career choices, given below for the ISFJ, are found in the fields of administration, business, counseling, design, elementary education, healthcare, law, religion, social work, research, and science. Support or assistant roles of many kinds, from personal assistant to bookkeeper to office manager to court reporter, are held by ISFJ helper types. Design, graphic design, interior design. Medicine/healthcare. Dentist/optometrist/audiologist/veterinarian. Helper/technical medical jobs. Nurse, PA, physical therapist, speech therapist, dental hygienist, dialysis technician, radiology technician, nutritionist, dietitian. Education/counseling. Teacher, children/administrator, counselor, social worker, religious worker, religious education, money counselor. Law support. Paralegal, court reporter, court clerk, probation officer. Research/science. Librarian, curator, historian, genealogist, scientist, biologist. Money/records. Bookkeeper, teller, payroll clerk, real estate appraiser. Office manager, hotel manager, customer service rep, tech support specialist, administrative assistant, personal assistant, insurance claims clerk, insurance policy processing clerk, medical records technician, human resources, administration. Other: farmer, rancher, electrician, jeweler, publisher. Compatibility recommendations for ISFJ. Perhaps opposites attract, but do they represent the best partnerships? The answer to this question may be no, not quite. The most common recommendations for type compatibility are generally based on the idea that the ideal partnership involves two people with the same dominant cognitive function, but differing, opposite attitudes, I/E and J/P. This approach is said to ensure a shared vision while providing different approaches to interaction with the world. Therefore, the commonly recommended types for ISFJ are ESFP or ESTP. There are other recommendations floating around, including SFJ, STJ, and NFJ. ISFJ, ENFJ, and ESTJ, and least compatible with NTJ, NTP, and ENFP. SFJ and STP. Women, SFJ and ISTJ. Men, ISFJ, ISTJ. Remember that these are just recommendations. They do not necessarily approve or blacklist any particular person from consideration. Why? Because there are so many different people within each type. Keyword, different. Remember, it's a type, not a summary or essence of any particular individual. It has some predictive value, but it will not be a bullseye. Every relationship takes a lot of give and take. A good marriage, it has been said, is not a 50-50 proposition. It's 100-100. We each have to be all in. So while it may take a lot of work to create a healthy relationship with a type very different from your own, it can also take a lot, maybe even more work, to put up with somebody else just like you. You can enjoy a relationship with any type. Type doesn't prescribe companions, but type information can help you to navigate your interactions with them.